is 5:15 on Wednesday, February 12th. I'd like to call this meeting of the Oregon Public Library Board to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Stata.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Goblin.
Here.
Reese.
Here.
Beschen.
Here.
And Bergstrom and Bouncenfield.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to adopt or amend the agenda, please?
I'll make a move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Coral. Is there?
Second.
Thank you, Laura. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of adopting the agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have an agenda. Any community input this evening? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to amending and approving minutes from our January meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving on to review and payment of available bills and accepting the financial reports. Do we have a motion to move forward with those?
I can do that.
Thank you, Carleen. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, anything you'd like to point out, Jennifer?
There's 2 pages in your bills. One is the remaining 2024 bills that we got, and the other is, my tabs are bad, I'm sorry about that. And then the other is the bills for 2025. So just to know that there are 3 pages there. There's always some bills that trickle in or go through other departments first that take us a little while to get at the end of the year. So Laura does a great job of trying to wrap those all in, and we believe this is the final batch to the best of our knowledge.
Great.
The South Central Library System on the February 2025 bill list, you will see some fees that are one-time annual costs. Much of it is for Overdrive, which is statewide purchasing, where libraries collaboratively statewide purchase, and that's our share of the South Central portion of that contribution. So if you've borrowed anything by Libby, that's how that is paid for, with libraries statewide paying their share. We also had our first carpet cleaning, so you'll see the bill on for that, and that'll be something we'll do on an annual basis. And then 1901 is a larger amount. That's we have spring and fall seasonal maintenance, and then summer maintenance on the DOAS unit for the geothermal, and so that's the fall installment to complete that. Any questions?
No questions? All right. All in favor of review and payment of bills and accepting the financial reports?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thanks, everybody. We can move on to 6A, the library director's report.
So just want to highlight some things. We are fortunate to have local art on display in our community room and our reading room for the very first time. So you will see Ken Anderson on display in the community room, and John Bonsett-Veal on display in the reading room on the 2nd floor. So if you haven't stopped by to see those, they're always open. Anytime the library is open, the community room is open anytime there is not an event already occurring in the room, so there's not an active reservation. We've had a lot of people enjoy those. Encourage you to stop by on your way out if you haven't checked them out already. They're only up for a little bit longer, so don't miss your chance. We also have our winter reading program for the month of February, to encourage folks of all ages to read in winter and February, which is a perfect time to curl up with a book. We are also thrilled to have Lori Rosengren Hazelden back as our Youth Services Assistant Limited Term Employee. We talked about last month the generous donation that we had to pay the additional cost to have her for that position for the full year of 2025, and with the number of illnesses, we've had employees up sick almost on a daily basis with all the things going around, and so we've been so grateful to have her back. We're not sure quite how we would have gotten by without that, so we're very thankful for that donors' generous support. We are also ready to move in now, so Laura and I have been trying to get some things done that we haven't been able to get done because of other priorities, but The Friends made a generous donation to support some amenities in our kitchen in the community room. So folks using the community room have dishes and popular entertaining supplies that are available, coffee makers and things that they can use while using the room, so that we can share those items and not have to be brought in every time, and dishes that can be washed instead of going in the trash. So those feel free to peek in the cupboard if you'd like, see what we have to offer for the room users. But special thanks to Laura and Sarah for doing that, and to the Friends of the Library for sponsoring those items. They did not come out of any taxpayer funds. They were all donated by Friends of the Library. Our staff is working on our annual performance evaluation and feedback process. So that's something we typically do each year starting in January. We did skip last year because of all the changes and transitions with the new building. So we look forward to having those conversations with our team this spring. We also have made some more changes. The village has made some changes with some software. So you heard last fall that we switched to online timekeeping. And now we're also on online invoicing. So instead of having to photocopy bills and submit them that way, we are able to do that electronically through the village system, which has been working really great thanks to Laura's work with the village hall. It also is great because we can see our balances more quickly without having to go through village staff. So it's a significant time and paper saver, which we're very excited about. We're hoping to capitalize on the use of that system even more as the year goes on and everybody gets familiar with what it can do. I mentioned the carpet cleaning. We are still working with Tri-North on some warranty items. As of today, we have 17 items that we're still hoping to wrap up. And so 6 of those need to wait till warmer weather to complete. So we have about 11 that we're hoping will get completed very shortly. Go ahead.
Do any of those things put the building at risk at any level?
No.
Okay.
No. They're all, crooked exit sign or door hardware that needs adjustment. Yeah. They're, for the most part, pretty minor. Anything, it's mostly pretty minor, very nitpicky, sealant on a window, sill kind of thing. So it's all pretty nitpicky things, and nothing is operation critical or it would have been taken care of already.
Thank you.
So if they just have to order things, and that takes a while. We are all ready to file our IRA incentive. The IRS had a glitch with their website. We expect that we'll get a total of about $43,000 back, including that includes a electric vehicle rebate that the village is doing for public works. So our share for library solar was about $35,000. So we're expecting them to be able to file by the end of February. And then last year we received our refund quicker than other filers because it was filed electronically, and that's not something a lot of the direct pay applicants can receive. And so hopefully that'll help us get our payment again more quickly. And we're fortunate because there's talk about changing some of those provisions in future years. So we're fortunate to have received both those refunds while they're around. We talked last month a little bit. We are now on BadgerNet, so that's great. Our second cutover was successful, and South Central really worked hard to make that go smoothly the second time. And so we also are hoping that the delays caused kind of an unintended benefit of hopefully being able to have a backup system. So if there are some long-term or significant outages with BadgerNet, that we'll be able to have South Central switch us over very quickly to our backup internet, since we still have that all set up and we need to maintain it for our phone system. We still have one furniture vendor that we are unfortunately struggling with them to get our remaining items, and it's very, very few items, but for whatever reason they're not able to prioritize or get our punch list quite right. So their current estimate is to have those items in late March. I've been waiting to hear from the factory for 2 weeks to see if they can expedite that, since we've been waiting for a long time, but they're not very concerned with their customers apparently.
Can we give them a bad review?
What?
Let's just give them a really bad review.
There's a long story there, but it wouldn't be professional for me to share that story.
After you enjoy it?
Yes.
Moving on.
So a couple village highlights. The village is doing, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but just for everyone to know, their village is doing a series of informational sessions for community members, village residents, to learn more about the referendum question that'll be on the April 1st ballot for village residents for operational funds. So there's a series in February and March, and so folks that have questions, if they share questions with you or express concern or wanting to learn more, you can direct them to one of those sessions. And then in addition, we're fortunate to have some village board members, the outreach program they have, do a table in the library lobby on 3 Saturdays this spring, where community members will be able to just pop by and say hello, share any comments, questions, concerns about the referendum or anything else, really, whatever. It's just a chance for the community members to connect with them. We had the first one this past Saturday, and it was a great time. I think we had over 100 people in the building when they happened to be here, so that was great. And hopefully they had a chance to talk to some folks, and just nice to have that presence and opportunity for people. There are 2 spring elections coming up. The first one is next Tuesday on the 18th with the state superintendent primary. Is the only thing on the Village of Oregon ballot anyway. And then the April 1st election will include the referendum question for the village, along with some trustee seats, 3 trustee seats, and then the village president seat is up for re-election and has 2 candidates running for that. So make sure you vote.
Also state Supreme Court.
Just doing a local one, sorry. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but that's kind of the highlights of what's going on right now.
Any questions? Thanks, everybody, for all their hard work again. It seems to be the theme. Moving on to upcoming library events.
So you do have a flyer in here for the listening and learning sessions that the village board is doing in the library lobby. So feel free to share that with anybody or ask me, and I can email you one if somebody asks you about it. It is posted at various places throughout the community. We also have our February events library program calendar highlights here. And then is it okay if I go into
Yep,
statistics?
Let's move on to statistics.
I'm not going to talk a ton about statistics because we have our annual report for 2024 stats available today, but I do want to highlight, Alicia ran some statistics by collection to kind of see which collections over the past year with our new building, what the impact on use was in specific collections. So it's just kind of fun to see that our graphic novel collection in the adult use of that almost basically double or almost tripled. I'm looking at the increase wrong, sorry. Just because of it's more in a more visible place. So that's really exciting to see that used more. You also see our board books and our picture books. Those were switched to face out shelving strategically. And you can see that both of those collections have basically almost doubled in use because of how they're increased library use and because of how they're more accessible to kids. So the idea there is that it's more engaging for kids to be able to more easily look through books themselves. They don't have to worry quite so much about keeping things in a row. They can kind of flip through and then choose their own reading, and that's very important for kids to be able to choose what they want to read. It increases their engagement and this helps them be more engaged readers. Our adult nonfiction collection, we were kind of surprised to see that collection going up significantly, an increase of 64%, and we think that's just because of where it was located, and we kind of located it. It's a little bit more convenient to walk by. You kind of walk by it first when you go to other things, and so we think that's in part why the use is up. So kind of just fun to see what is being used more. The large print collection too is a fun one to look at, going up about 50%. And then I skipped over teen print materials, but that's 89% increase, so it's almost doubled, which is really something that we were hoping the new library would increase teen use. Before, the teen area was very small, hard to notice, I should say, and just kind of stuck in a corner, and so just having a space for teens has really increased their use of the collection, along with the teen librarian position and the teen programming we've been offering. We think all those things have played into that increased use and something we want to see teens being engaged in reading in the library community as well. So thanks to Alicia for kind of putting some really complicated numbers into kind of a quick and easy to read chart. And then we do have our January 2025 numbers in the packet. January 2024 was our first month open, and there was a lot of excitement, so our numbers are a little bit lower than what we saw last year, but we do expect other increases to kind of sustain over the course of the year. That January number will just be a little bit lower probably in some of the categories anyway. Are there any questions?
Actually, on the first chart, again, I just want to make sure that I'm reading it correctly. So the first section of numbers, that's things that are actually physically in this library. And the next one
Let me pull it up.
is, the next section is people in Oregon who checked out items from any of the libraries.
Yes.
And the last one is anybody from any libraries who checked out stuff from Oregon. Is that right?
So the first,
The last one is really the one I just don't know how to interpret. Checkouts across all SCLS LinkCat libraries.
yeah, so that's comparing us to all South Central libraries.
Okay, all
And so
right.
you can kind of see ours went up 199%. Is that
Got it,
normal or
got
not?
it.
So you can
Okay.
kind of see, well, what's happening elsewhere, and it's not, then you can see how much of an outlier that
Right,
is.
okay, that's,
There's-
I was just,
yeah.
didn't know what I was looking at in that column compared
Yeah.
to the other two made sense. Okay,
So
thank
like
you. I
on the
appreciate it.
bottom, some of the smaller increases we have don't seem as dramatic, but then when you look at other libraries are actually seeing a decrease in those collections, then it's a little bit more. That's why she
Yeah.
included that, so you can kind
Yeah,
of see how it
it's very
compares to
impressive.
the trends in the area. That's a great question,
Yeah,
Carlene.
thanks for that clarification.
And when I was looking at the January door counts, it looks like we need to have a grand opening every year, because I think that's probably just our gap right there. It was that 2 hours.
Right? Do a party every January.
Right?
An anniversary party. Why not?
Thank you, Jennifer. Any questions or comments on the statistics? If not, I don't think we have any committee reports this month.
No.
So we can move on to any village board announcements, Carly?
I think the biggest village board announcement is just really the referendum. There was no new business on last village board meeting agenda, and we have another village board meeting on Monday. So the big thing is just really making sure that people understand what's happening with the referendum. And I will share, I'm on the Public Works Committee, and I just want to give a major shout out to Lauren Striegel, who put together a presentation of what is going to be happening, why it's happening, and what village residents will see. So and it's mostly having to do with streets being paved and water system kinds of things happening, but she just made it so accessible. So I'd encourage folks who have questions about that to look at the packet from the last Public Works meeting, because she did a fine job of just breaking it down in something that's really accessible. So I won't tell you all of those things because it's there.
Thank you. I'm not sure that we have any school district announcements. So we'll move on to 7A, update 2025 village referendum for village operational funds.
So I included a couple things in your packet, and I believe I also emailed them separately to you, just so you had the handouts in case you wanted to share them with anybody aside from the library board packet. So the first part is what is at the top of the village referendum website. So it has the info session dates and the latest kind of press release information that the village is sharing on their website, just so you can see the messaging that they're sharing and have all that same information about what's being included and how they're explaining things, because it's kind of complicated, so it's nice to see them try to simplify it as much as possible. And of course, it doesn't address every question someone might have, unfortunately. They are going to be doing a mailer to village residents. I believe it's going out next week, so that's something you can watch your inboxes for. And they're hoping that that'll address some questions that folks may have who haven't maybe been able to see all of the information available. The other things you have are, there's a short one page, which is front and back handout that kind of explains the information so people can see what is included. It has did you knows to kind of explaining why a referendum is being considered or was considered and being posed to the community, the property tax impact, and then what happens with different outcomes of it. Also telling people kind of how to vote with a QR code there to get to more information. So that's a nice, simple handout. They also have a more in-depth handout that kind of answers some of the frequently asked questions that they are hearing from the community to try to respond to those. And then these handouts are available at all village buildings. They're on the referendum website for people to read or print out if they wish. So just want to make sure you have that same information should you find it beneficial. The question itself that would be on the ballot is here as well, so that folks know what that would be. And then, this is a great one about growth and costs. That's something that comes up a lot of times because of its complexities. So I would encourage you to take a minute to read through each of those just so you have the information because it is kind of complex.
I just want to reinforce what Jennifer said about the whole question of growth, and if allowing growth is not covering the costs, if we're not growing, we also still have costs, and without some growth, we have no funds that we can access in addition to what we already have, and so I hear, why can't we just keep the village small? Well, the village is small, and it's very accessible to so many of the places where people work. And certainly one of the things that the village board is constantly talking about and investigating is how we can expand commercial growth in the village so that there's not so much dependence on individual homeowners for paying the taxes that provide the services. And just say again that that's something that we're diligently pursuing, and there are folks who want to have businesses here. It's a matter of where can that happen. We're kind of landlocked now, and so it's certainly an ongoing conversation at the village board.
The other one of the questions on the FAQ I'll point out too is a frequently asked question about could the money that were used for the library or projects like JC Park could have been used to fund the operating budget, and the answer is no. And this explanation does a nice job of explaining why that money is different and why those funds could not have been used in that way. So I think that's a helpful answer to read through and understand. And if you have questions about any of these or other questions that you've heard, feel free to pass them on, and it might be something the village adds to their FAQ list in the future if you have feedback.
I like that there was one about the volunteers as well. Acknowledging all the volunteers we do have, but then also like acknowledging that that is not the same as having expert staff.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we can move on to the Department of Public Instruction's annual report.
So this is a report we're required to file with the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction every year, and it's required to be approved by the library board. So there's some just general factual information about our operating hours and various statistics that they instruct you to report in a very specific way. And their intent is that if everybody reports it in the same way, you hopefully can compare apples to apples to the extent possible when you're comparing different libraries and how you're doing with different metrics of how busy you are or whatever. So this year we have a different answer because we did move to a new building. We have a different answer on this first page indicating that we did move, and that's something that libraries don't very often get to answer.
Did it like keep defaulting to no?
So actually, that had a lot of technical difficulties in which you couldn't save an answer, and so there was a lot of going back and doing the same answer multiple times. I think I caught all of them, but. So one of the things to note is our collection includes more than 78,000 items, so that's kind of a fun number to realize. They changed how they count electronic things, so there's just a lot of yes/no questions that aren't super interesting to you guys. Our total circulation was about 240,000 items last year, and that's an increase of about 28% over 2023. That does not include the digital items, so items checked out electronically. There's about 53,000 uses electronically in addition to that don't go into that total. Oh yeah, you can see that here. Total e-materials is 53,870. The other interesting metric is reference transactions was about 11,204. The prior year was about 5,900, so that was a significant increase.
Wow.
Because we have the different desks and staff are more available to help people where they're at.
That's amazing.
That's, I think, why that people are asking more questions, and those are not just like directional, like where's the bathroom or how do I copy something. Those are questions that require staff research and not just common knowledge, like what are your hours, where it's something that we can just recite.
I was wondering how many of those were my son asking you to look up his library card number for him.
There's a very specific definition about what we can
perfect.
include. So anything that's procedural or just general knowledge is not included there. So there's a lot more questions, but those are reference questions.
That's
yeah,
fair.
where research is required. For library visits, our visits this year were 128,000. And that doesn't count, Alicia, just for staff that are scheduled, so she takes out staff visits to the library, which is good to know. Our public computer use was over 5,000 for the year.
Question,
Yes, John?
when it says the uses of public wireless internet, the annual count was over 256,000. What does that mean really? What's
That means
number?
anytime a device connects to our wireless for more than, I think it's like 5 minutes.
So when
So-
I use internet on my phone in this building, it's counting.
If you have it set to automatically connect, it would count. If you didn't have it set to automatically connect, then it would only connect if you told it to. So
Okay.
that would include, this number unfortunately would include staff who have devices that would automatically connect when they come in the building if they have their phone set to do that. But it would also be if somebody's connecting to our wireless to use a laptop. So it would include all of those
And
things.
does it require a passcode or?
We do not have a password for the public wireless.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Our library programs also increased quite a bit this year. So in total, we have more than 16,000 attendees at, I told these up this morning and it doesn't total up very nicely in this little chart, but I told it like 3 times today. 592 library programs with almost 17,000 attendees, which is pretty fantastic. And we are fortunate to be able to really, of those programs, really include a lot more teen programming than we have in the past because of that teen librarians. We're able to kind of specialize and have programming that's more specifically targeted at age groups and where they're at developmentally with their peers. This section is library board members. For the packet, I did take out your street address and email address, but that is part of the actual report does include that information. It also includes our report of operating revenue and expenses. It's important to note that it is not based on audited village numbers, so it's should not be used as a financial record. If we want financial information, we really should be looking at the village records just because of how they instruct us to report numbers, and because there's numbers that are not available by the village at this point in the year before this is due, and they realize that. So our biggest revenue is the Village of Oregon funding. So you see their 2024 contribution here. We also receive payments from Dane County, so we had almost $230,000 from Dane County in 2024. We also receive funding from adjacent counties, so this is funding we got in 2024 for service provided in 2023. There's a lag there, so it's kind of a delay. So you can kind of see, then that's based on use, so the more uses we have by folks that live in those counties that don't have a library, the greater that funding is relative to the formula. If everything else stays the same, it's complicated, there's a number of factors that go into it. We also have to spell out some specific funds that we get. So each year we get a literacy grant to support some certain specific summer reading program eligible expenses. So we usually use that for summer reading prizes or performers. And then we had E-rate reimbursement. That's something we get annually. And then our continuing education grants we get from South Central Library System that came out of federal funds. We do have other operating income is a lot of different things go into that bucket. So that's revenue from like any copies that we have, any lost books, donations. So there's a whole wide range of numbers that go into that line. So it's kind of hard to understand what it means just looking at the total. They ask what the village committed for the coming year. So line 9 shows what the village committed for 2026. And then you see a breakdown of our expenditures and how we're using different funds. And the instructions change slightly from year to year about how to report things based on staffing at the various entities, and this is also something that's done nationwide, so a lot of times they'll decide to track new things and not necessarily tell you ahead of time or just change where they want to see things reported. Our staffing is our most costly expenditure, so you see the top two items 1 and 2 are our employee salaries and benefits. It is important to note that this is the first year where we're including our janitor, library cleaning in the staff wages. Before that was a contracted cost and was reported elsewhere, so that's an important thing to note. We spent about $96,000 on all of our different collections last year. And then you can see the contracts that we are supposed to provide. So you saw a lot of these bills on our voucher list this month for 2025 expenses. These are the 2024 amounts that we spent on those services. Other library expenditures are really everything else we spent money on that didn't fall into those buckets above. So things like building maintenance, related things, purchase of office supplies, cleaning products, fire alarm inspections, all those different types of things fall under the other operating expenditure category. So again, it's hard to understand just by looking at these lines what exactly goes into them, so our budget documents and village financial reports are more helpful. We do have to report money we spent on capital expenditures, and they have a very specific definition of what you can count as capital and what you cannot. And so these are the expenses that we had that were eligible in 2024 per their definition. It's important to know that you can't just add up because of changes in how they've asked to report things and because the numbers aren't audited. We can't just add up the cost from year to year and have it magically match our total project costs. So if you ever want to know that, we can talk about that, but don't just add them up for the last 3 years because it will not necessarily be 1,000% accurate. Total amount of other funds held at the end of the year are funds that the library board has under their control. So a portion of that would be like the fund balance that we have for funds that the library hasn't spent from budget. A portion would be donated funds, a portion of it is new building donations, and so that's kind of the balance as of December 31st. And there's certain restrictions on how we can use each of those types of money or what we have them set aside for. We are supposed to report our staff. So you see the staff, the hours worked for each position, and then the wages for all those. And that's useful for libraries when they're comparing different positions and wages from library to library. They can see how many hours of shelving does Verona have versus our library, which is a good comparison. So With our teen librarian and our janitor position being added to the staff count, we have 14.7 FTE as of the end of 2024. This section, loans to non-residents, just basically reports the uses to other counties and people not living in the Village of Oregon. Some of those uses are reimbursable, and there's a financial transaction that goes along with them per state statute, and some of them there are not. So it depends on which category they fall into. The self-directed activities is just a chance for us to count things that activities that we have in the library that people can kind of do on their own time. So it's not a program where everybody's doing the same thing at the same time, but it's like an activity where somebody might come and stop by and do the activity on their own schedule. And then the last page is confirming that we're in compliance with library system membership requirements per state statute, and we are. That's more for some libraries that are kind of struggling to meet a certain requirement, that they can kind of use that to make sure they stay in compliance. So there's two parts. So that's the first thing, we would need to approve the annual report. And then the second one, may I talk about the second one at the same time? Please do. The second one is an annual statement that we're supposed to say whether or not the South Central Library System provides effective leadership and meets our needs or not. And we're asked that question every year. And my recommendation there would be to say that they did meet our needs and provide effective leadership.
Especially because we know I'm back in it.
Well, that's not it wasn't their fault that we weren't, but they were very helpful in making it go smoothly.
Yeah, comments. Thank you.
The last, page 12, if anything goes up more than 5%, you're supposed to put a note. And so because we were so much busier, there was a lot of notes we were required to add. But there's also some notes that we just put in to help in the following year. So we are, if we're counting the same thing, we can compare the note and make sure we're counting it the same way, including the same things. And then also just in future years, if people were to look back and say, well, why was that number so high? There's kind of an explanation to go with it so that they're not wondering or thinking it was an error or something. Are there any questions?
When does this report become submitted?
It'll be submitted tomorrow if you approve it tonight.
Oh, may I make that motion?
So we needed twofold, right?
Yeah, there's the first.
Yep, so I would look for a motion to approve the annual report as presented, as well as the system statement of effectiveness for South Central.
Do they have to be separate motions? Or can it be all together?
For minute taking, let's do them as separate motions for
Okay.
Laura's.
Okay, so we'll do the first one first, approving the DPI annual report as presented. Thank you, John. Is there a second?
I can say. Oh, Coral. yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Coral. Any comments, discussion?
We have a great library and great staff and great director.
And I really appreciate all the work that goes into this. This is a lot of minutia that is very specific, and I appreciate all the time that went into
Can you instruct the
resaving
library
this.
director to send yourself a memo telling her?
That would be awkward.
Dear Jennifer, you're going great.
But I also love that just program attendance was almost double the village population. Like, it's amazing,
It is
the
amazing.
amount of programming and community outreach. I am just overwhelmed and thankful to be sitting here to say thank you to everyone who's had a hand in that, because it's just, when I saw that in there, I was just floored. Like, I had to pick my jaw up off my desk, so.
Think about
So
where we
thank
were
you.
5 years ago.
Right? It's just amazing.
Just crazy.
We are working on some infographics to communicate these on some social media posts, and also to kind of have a one-page handout that kind of more succinctly and more fun explains some of the numbers that people will care about. So that'll be shared at the March meeting.
These are really helpful, like, when we're talking about the referendum to folks, to just say, I mean, really, look at how incredible this library is, and then you and the staff, and then when you put it all into this annual report and you think about ways to explain that, it's just, people are blown away. Like, I had no idea there were so few before and there's so many now, and look how it compares with other libraries. They're just really impressed, so congratulations.
So all in favor of approving the annual report?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, now we can go on to the second one, to approve the system statement of effectiveness for South Central Library System.
I'll
Is there-
make that motion.
Thank you, Coral. Is there a
I'll
second?
second that.
Thank you, Carly. Any comments, questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to 7D, changing the date of our regular April 2025 meeting.
So I don't like to change meeting dates, and I've asked you to do it twice in the last 4 months, and I don't think I've asked to do it at my request prior to that in the whole 6 years before that. But this year, I'm gonna take vacation on spring break, and with the way the calendar falls a little bit, it would be difficult because I wouldn't be able to prepare the agenda during that week, and then it would basically be the Wednesday after spring break, which would be a little bit tight for that. It'd also be very close to the referendum, so if there's any action we need related to the outcome of the referendum, there wouldn't be much opportunity to think about those agenda items for that discussion to kind of decide how to move forward based on whatever outcomes come up. So I'm hoping to have you consider rescheduling the meeting. I also realize that you all have busy schedules and you may be planning your schedules around the meeting. My initial suggestion was just to move it back a week, but I know that may or may not be good for our schedules. So I guess if we can agree to consider rescheduling the meeting, I can maybe send out an email and give you some more chances to look at your calendar without putting you on the spot tonight. And we certainly could keep the meeting date if we need to. I'm just worried that to maximize our agenda and use of time, that we'd be better off waiting.
So you're
a week.
suggesting April 16th?
I would prefer the week after, because that would give me a week after
My
being back.
calendar was being weird.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the 23rd.
No, I'm sorry, I would suggest the week of the 16th, yeah, because it would have fallen on the 9th.
Oh, so the 16th. Got it.
Yeah, the referendum's on the 1st, it would have fallen on the 9th, and then, so I would prefer
okay.
the week after
Perfect.
the 9th, if possible, if we could find a date that worked for everybody.
16th is fine.
Works for me.
It works for me.
I would not be able to be there, but if everybody else is available, you can definitely meet without me.
Leslie also had a conflict, I asked her earlier today, and she said she does have a conflict on the 16th, so we would have 2 people that couldn't make it, so it might be worth.
I can make it, but I'm not running for reelection, and the election's on the 1st, so I don't know if I will still be on the board. I mean, I don't remember
The
when the transition
organizational
is.
meeting is until after that.
So I can make it.
So we will call that
Yeah.
your last meeting.
Yeah, that'll be my last meeting.
Well, let's,
If somebody resigns and you get to
yeah.
put me on the board.
I would just want to make sure that we don't put anybody on the spot, like if somebody else can't come, we don't want to leave anybody out of important discussion or have somebody else, feel like they can't come. So I will maybe just send out an email with that date, but also a few other options that might work and just see if we can find one that works for as many people possible and go from there.
Okay. Do you need a motion from us to do that?
If you could just, do a motion to
Okay.
reschedule the April meeting date.
I'll make that motion
Thank you,
to the
Carly.
16th,
Is there,
Or-
or open?
or at the time that
Yeah.
works for the most people.
To poll the board.
Mhm.
Thank you, Carly.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Coral. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, everyone. We'll TBD on the April 2025 meeting date.
And Dan, I'll let OCA know as soon as we get that set, so you know.
Our next meeting will be Wednesday, March 12th, here at the library at 5:15 p.m. Are there any requests for future agenda items? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Carleen. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Laura. All in favor?
Aye.
Happy birthday, John. We are adjourned.
Happy birthday.
And thank you.
Happy birthday.